Well, good evening. Warm welcome to you all. Welcome back after this long break. And it's a warm meeting because I've got the sun on my back. All right, thanks for attending this meeting of the Planning Committee on Thursday the 10th of June. Our committee members and officers are with me in the COVID Secure Civic Centre, and we have some registered speakers attending from home. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Caleb Tomlinson and I am the chair of this committee, and Councillor Mal Donoghue is the vice chair. This meeting is being recorded and the stream will also be live on YouTube. The web address for this is displayed on the agenda for the meeting. If you are attending the meeting because you're a member of the public who has registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of 4 minutes. You will be timed and I will confirm when 4 minutes runs out. You should then finish, or if in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and finish speaking. I'll ask you to come to the table, press the speak button, and then ask you to present. Voting will be undertaken by roll call, and I will read out your names alphabetically. Oh, I've missed some there. After each repeat report has been presented and any speakers have made their representations, I will bring the application into committee. And if any committee members wish to speak on an application, you should indicate. I will then invite you in order. Voting will be undertaken by roll call, and I will read out your names alphabetically to vote on each item. The item of the vote will be confirmed by our senior solicitor, Jodie Ingram, once complete. I'll begin with some housekeeping. Please can you ensure that mobile phones are either switched off or on silent mode. To reduce the spread of COVID-19, all tables and chairs have been placed within 2 metres of one another. Please do not move any tables or chairs during the meeting. You must wear a face mask whenever you leave or enter the room. If you are sat down, you may remove your mask. If you would feel more comfortable leaving your mask on, you can do so. You may have noticed that the doors are currently open to ensure airflow and ventilation, so you may wish to leave your jackets on, or if uncomfortable, take your jackets off. If you brought your own cup or bottle to drink from, please feel free to fill this up at any time during the meeting. However, you must wear a face mask when not sit down. Hand sanitizer and cleaning spray is located around the room for you to use if you so wish. We are not anticipating a fire alarm drill, but if the alarm does go off, you should leave via the fire exits in the cross and wheel rooms and wait on the grassy area on West Paddock. At the end of the meeting, I will ask you to leave in individual groups to avoid crowding. If I can now ask all committee members to introduce themselves, we will start with Councillor Adams and go around one by one, ending with Councillor Caroline Moon.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Adams and I represent Middlefirth and Pemberton.
Hello, I'm Councillor Gareth Watson and I represent Cap Green and Gregson Lane.
Hi, I'm Mal Donoghue, Councillor Mal Donoghue. I represent Seven Stars Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith, representing New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening all, John Hesketh, I represent Longton and Hutton West.
Chris Lomax, Waltley Dale East.
Councillor Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Councillor James Flannery, Middlefirth Pemberton.
Good evening, Janice Crook, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Debbie Roberts, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Catherine Lewis, Planning Officer.
Good evening, I'm Christine Melia, Councillor for Bamber East.
Good evening, Councillor Barry Yates, Salisbury and Walton, representing residents of South Ribble.
Councillor Harry Hancock, I represent Broad Oak Ward.
Councillor Caroline Moon, I represent Buckshaw Worden.
Okay, thank you all. Some of our officers have already represented themselves, so Jodie, if you'd like to go first.
Good evening, Jodie Ingram, Senior Solicitor.
Good evening, Jonathan Node, Director of Planning and Development.
Good evening, Stephen Brown, Head of Development Management.
Good evening, Linda Ashcroft, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Charlotte Lynch, Democratic and Member Services Officer.
Okay, went well as it could be expected. Do we have any apologies for absence?
None, Chair.
Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to declare a personal interest in item number 11 on the basis that a year ago I was invited in my role as Chair of the Business Recovery Group to attend a meeting on site, and I've had correspondence since. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Christine Melia.
Yes, I'd like to declare an interest in item number 9, a personal interest, as I live in the vicinity where the planning application is for. It's not very near, but it is in the vicinity, so I thought I'd better declare a personal interest.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Melia. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 7, it's actually, I realise it's a relation that's applying. I didn't realise, but so I'll go out on that one.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Have we all read the minutes of the last meeting? Can I have a proposer?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Councillor Watson. I will sign those presently. Well, we'll go to the vote first. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Donoghue.
For, Chair.
Councillor Flannery.
For, Chair.
Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Harry Hancock.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh. Councillor Chris Lomax.
For.
Councillor Christine Melia.
For, Chair.
Councillor Caroline Moon.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
For.
Councillor Gareth Watson.
For, Chair.
And I am also for those, so I will sign them. Okay, do we have any appeal decisions to report?
Yes, Chair, we do. Thank you. We've got 2 to report tonight. The first relates to Chewson's Farm at Gill Lane, Walmer Bridge. This was an outline application for 9 dwellings within the green belt. The inspector concluded that it wasn't within the settlement and couldn't be considered infill, so it's inappropriate development. There were no exceptional circumstances to allow it, and therefore he concluded there would be harm to the openness and character and appearance of the area, and the appeal was dismissed. The second one relates to Grove Cottage on Slater Lane in Leyland. The property is a 6-bedroom detached dwelling, and the appeal related to a refusal to a grant of lawful development certificate. The proposed use was for a home for 4 children between 18 and 16 years old with a range of learning difficulties. This involved a shift pattern of carers with other specialist staff visiting. The application sought confirmation that this still fell within use class C3 as a dwelling house. We disagreed, considering it was a residential institution C2. In terms of the decision, based on the specific circumstances of the site and evidence before him, he concluded that given the numbers and the potential levels of noise and disturbance, this would constitute a change of use. So the appeal was dismissed and our position upheld. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Stephen. All right, we'll move on to item number 6 on tonight's agenda. Turberry House Nursery, Chainhouse Lane, White Stake. Chris Sowerby to present this item, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen now, so if you just bear with us for one moment. Can I just check that you can hear me loud and clear and you can see the...
We can certainly hear you, yes.
I'll sit back a bit then. Right, okay, thank you, Chair. The application relates to a mixed-use parcel of land as detailed within section 2 of the report. To the south of the site is Duxbury's Garden Centre, along with residential properties on Chainhouse Lane. The site is within the green belt. The yellow line highlights the area that was subject to the lawful development certificate that's detailed within section 3 of the report. This is a view of the western boundary. The storage that's shown within this photo is not permitted.
Chris, we're not seeing anything apart from the main application page here.
Right.
I think you might need to scroll down and click left.
Just one moment. So has it changed?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I'll go back. I'm not sure why that is. So the application relates to a mixed-use parcel of land. That's detailed from section 2 of the report. What I wanted to highlight on this slide was the line, the yellow line. This highlights the area that was subject to the lawful development certificate that is detailed within section 3 of the report. This is a view of the western boundary. The storage shown in this photograph is not permitted and will sought to be removed regardless of the outcome of this application. This is a view of part of the western section of the site, which includes the drainage tanker storage. The western section of the site also includes an outdoor display area for the Birds of Prey Centre. A static caravan is present on the site, which is used as an ancillary office for the Birds of Prey Centre. This is an aerial photograph that shows the site in context with residential properties on Newgate Lane. So you've got the western edge of the site here. This is the field that the previous photograph showed some storage materials in, and then you have the drain tanker storage here. In the central section of the site, there's approximately 5,000 square metres of glass houses, together with polytunnels and external storage, and approximately 80 caravans are stored within the sites within a secure compound. The existing main building is used for storage and ancillary log processing as part of the applicant's landscaping business. And this is an aerial photograph of the eastern section of the site, which comprises of 2 fields, with part of the northern field actively used for open storage. The southern field remains open and is occasionally used for laser clay pigeon shooting. As detailed within section 4.16 of the report, an access track has recently been formed, and this is a photo of the said works taking place last year. Caravan pitches and ancillary works detailed within section 4.4 of the report are proposed within the western section. So you have a field here. This is the Birds of Prey element down here, and this is where you've got proposed 26 touring caravan pitches. There's an ancillary building there, and you've also got the office for the Birds of Prey Centre and a playground. The existing caravan storage that is present to the east of the main building is proposed to be relocated to the west of the building, centrally within the site. And the open storage that's located from the western section of the site, which included that drainage tanker storage, that's proposed to be relocated to the east of the existing building over there. In the 2 eastern fields, leisure and recreational uses are proposed. Full glazing is proposed to the frontage of the existing building on the site. And this plan details the proposed ancillary building for the caravan site with shower, toilet and washing facilities. There are no objections to the proposal from any of the statutory consultees. As detailed within section 7.4, it is the officer's view that the proposed development would not have a greater impact on the openness of the green belt and is policy compliant. For these reasons and those contained within the report, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Chris. Okay, I have 3 registered speakers on this application. Do we have a Christine Furlong? Okay, if you'd like to press the speak button. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, if you can start, you have 4 minutes, all right?
Thank you. My objections. The green belt. I have been a resident of Newgate Lane for 18 years and have loved and appreciated the fact that we are lucky enough to live within a protected green belt. However, over the past few years, from the junction of Penwortham Way to Newgate Lane, which is approximately a 1 mile stretch of road, the council have given planning permission for 9 new houses to be built. Plus, there are several other planning applications still pending. I believe that the proposed development of Turberry House Nursery will result in even more urbanisation, impact on residential amenities and result in even more traffic. Over the years, the traffic has increased and become heavier. As a daily dog walker, I often take my life in my hands, walking along Chain House Lane, which is very narrow paving, and trying to cross the road is very dangerous, with speeding cars and no pedestrian crossing. Do we really need the addition of even more traffic, pollution and noise from 27 touring caravans and cars? In addition to this, I understand that Waterloo Tankers have a pending application with the Transport Authority to increase their fleet of 4 vehicles kept in open storage to 12 with 5 trailers, thus increasing the potential of even more regular heavy traffic and damage to road surfaces. Flooding. Over recent years, we've had more rainfall and surface flooding in the area, particularly in fields off Chain House Lane. With the proposed tarmacking of large areas of Turberry House nurseries, my concern is that this will result in more serious flooding. Wildlife. I am a volunteer with the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, the Longton Brickcroft Nature Reserve and Woodlands Animal Sanctuary in Holmeswood. As a volunteer at Animal Sanctuary, I helped to rehabilitate and release hedgehogs back into the wild. There's been a huge decline in hedgehog numbers. Indeed, in 2020, they were placed into the endangered species list and now are vulnerable to extinction in the UK. The Animal Sanctuary deemed that my garden and my neighbour's field, which backs onto Turberry House Nursery, would make an ideal site to release rehabilitated hedgehogs. Over the years, I've released many hedgehogs where they live and successfully breed in relative safety. However, they're nocturnal and often roam quite a distance during the night. The proposed development with potential noise, light and disturbance may very well have detrimental effect upon these little creatures' lives. According to the Wildlife Trust, UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world. Our wildlife is disappearing at an alarming rate. But we are very lucky in Whitestake to have hedgehogs, foxes, rabbits, brown hare, stoats and recently roe deer. We have wildlife ponds that host to frogs, newts and toads. We have trees and numerous species of birds. At the proposal of laying hard standing tarmac over a large area, the installation of lights, potential noise and movement of touring caravans, cars, lorries, and particularly at night, will surely have a detrimental impact upon the local wildlife. Once their habitat and pathways have been destroyed, our wildlife will be gone forever. I conclude by saying that I believe that further development of Turberry House Nursery with the caravan site and other buildings would not be in keeping with the local semi-rural ambience and lead to further erosion of our precious green belt. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for your presentation. Do we have a Neil Worth?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for letting me speak tonight. First of all, may I just look at if you can put the map back on, please, the screen, because the track that's been put down on the right-hand side of the existing buildings was a new track last year. There was never a track there. There never has been. That was put in without permission. So the drawing is actually wrong. This site lies in the green belt, and the green belt is the intention is to preserve the openness and to provide separation between urban areas. There's a checkered history to this site where a number of activities have in the past and still are taking place that require planning conditions by the council. However, if the council needs to assure itself that if it were to approve of the requested development, then the intensity of the development does not compromise the green belt principles of my residential amenity. In terms of the more detailed aspects of the application, it is difficult to gauge the impact on my residential amenity. I actually live at 76 Chain House Lane, which backs on, sorry, the field on the right, on the east side, backs onto my property. Whilst in principle, these uses may seem to fit almost harmlessly into the local environment, there are too many variables to make that judgment. For example, the petting zoo is just labelled as a land use on the plan and with limited supporting text. Presumably there will be pens, shelters for the animals, as well as a means of containment which could impact on my residential amenity. Similarly, there will be implications for dealing with animal waste and drainage in general into water courses that the applicant has not kept clear for years. Also, it is not made clear what the intensity of use will be in terms of seasons or days and hours of the week, and again, what impact there will be on my residential amenity. Similar arguments apply to the proposed recreation and leisure uses, and more particularly the disturbance that will be created by the laser clay shooting and mini tanks and jeeps, both in terms of activity and noise. What is missing from the proposals is the provision of facilities for the recreation visitors, the recreation and leisure visitors. Limited car parking is shown, but it is inevitable that toilets on the site of the illegal new track would have to be provided. You have to have washing facilities after petting animals. That is the law. Again, without the details, it's difficult to ascertain the adverse impact on my amenity. Based on the previous history of the site, it is imperative that if the council is minded to approve of any development, it is done through stringent conditions to the list I have raised, which then provide me with an opportunity to make my views known when more details and any further proposals are presented. In summary, I would urge the council to be satisfied that proposals do not compromise the green belt, particularly in the light of my comments on the likely need for additional facilities for visitors and keeping the landscape open. In terms of recreational leisure uses, the council must not only protect the green belt, but also local residential amenities. These proposals do not provide sufficient information of how the site will be developed in detail and managed in the long term. I have no objections to the proposals to increase the storage of caravans as per the plans. That's the touring, not the touring caravans, the storage of caravans. But I view the larger proposals as an over-commercialisation of a green-belted residential area.
You need to tie up,
and therefore strongly object. If the council is minded to grant partial consent to part of the site, I urge them to only grant consent for the land use proposed and must impose a series of strong conditions that control the way these are used.
Yeah, you need to tie up now, Mr. Worth, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Okay, do we have a Leslie Keller?
Hi everybody, I'm Leslie and our property shares a boundary with the Turbury site to the west. My family feel privileged to live in this quiet, peaceful, semi-rural area. We really enjoy the agriculture, the farming that dominate the area. My family and myself are not anti-development. We understand that places need to diversify. We believe that there is a win-win outcome for this application for the Greenbelt, local wildlife, the applicant, the council, local farmers and neighbours. Our objection is to the scale and scope of this proposed development and how this will change the profile of Whitestake Village. The application asks for 9 different uses. They don't sit well together and they don't all fit with the residential and agricultural amenity of Whitestake. Several parts of the application are retrospective. They've already been developed: the road, log processing, clay pigeon shooting, and the applicant has shown little regard for planning procedure several times and over a period of time. In 2018, permission was granted for storage at the site and was given on the basis that this had taken place unnoticed for a period of 10 years. To help prevent such a large quantity of our Greenbelt land being lost to an array of business, industry, leisure, we propose that the touring caravan site is taken out of the application. And this is because the application places the touring caravan site partly on land that is currently used by Waterloo tankers, but at least 50% of the touring caravan site would be situated on agricultural land. The Town and Country Planning Act defines agriculture as including horticulture, fruit growing, seed growing, dairy farming, breeding and keeping of livestock. Touring caravan sites are considered inappropriate development on agricultural land unless there are very special circumstances. Greenbelt policy tells us that very special circumstances only exist if potential harm to the Greenbelt is clearly outweighed by other considerations. The only consideration put forward by the applicant is that the touring caravan site should be categorised as outdoor recreation. Outdoor recreation is defined as sporting activity outside. The Inspectorate Appeal decision noted in the planning report does not recognise a touring caravan site as outdoor recreation. And we, my husband and I, have found a large number of other cases where planning committees have refused planning permission outright for touring caravan sites on the grounds that they are not permitted development in Greenbelt. I've got details of these if you'd like to see them. In the wider context, the touring caravan site is only one of several inappropriate developments proposed through this application. The others are caravan storage that will expand into agricultural land. 30 car parking spaces on the eastern side on what is currently an open field. A large road that's already been constructed across the entire site, not forgetting the permanent large brick building that's part of the touring caravan site proposal. The win-win outcome would be, as a minimum, for the touring caravan site to be refused permission and for this area to be returned to nil use. Then, for councillors to consider which of the other developments should be permitted, bearing in mind that this will change the profile and use of this site forever. The application is so complex and it's taken many months to get to this point, and the application still fails the main test: damaging development of our Greenbelt. Mr. Kenworthy, our objections are not personal. We are respectfully asking that you place the wider needs for the Greenbelt before inappropriate development.
You need to tie up now, Leslie. You've got 4 minutes.
You and this development, but not at the expense of our precious Greenbelt. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your presentation. Before I go to councillors not on committee, Chris, do you have any answers to those points?
Yes, I do, Chair. Ecology was raised by one of the objectors. We have consulted the council's ecology consultants and they've provided us with a response. They've raised no objections to the proposal. They've recommended a number of conditions which are contained within the report. Residential amenity was referred to in regards to the petting zoo and the leisure uses. And also, I think there was the issue of an unknown in terms of what shelters could be put up on the petting zoo. If you refer to condition 28 within the report, that is a condition which gives the council control over the details of what future shelters are agreed. And condition 23, that controls the hours of the leisure and the recreational uses. Noise, potential noise from the electric recreational vehicles. Again, this is, we've consulted environmental health. The application is accompanied by a noise impact assessment. As detailed within the report, the council's environmental health officer felt that the maximum distance between the recreational uses and existing residential properties was desirable, but they raised no objection to the application as currently submitted. And in regards to the touring caravan site, Mrs. Parkinson is correct in that approximately half of the proposed touring caravan pitches are proposed on an area of land that is classed as agricultural. In any normal circumstances, purely in isolation, an application which proposes to develop an agricultural field for touring caravans would be considered inappropriate development. However, this has to be taken in the context of the wider site. This isn't an application dealing with certain elements in isolation. What the planning committee need to look at is a more of a holistic approach in terms of what the existing situation is, what the lawful development certificate allows, and how the proposed development sits within the wider site. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thanks for that, Chris. Councillor Margaret Smith, the ward councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I would like, first of all, to thank the officers for the time and trouble that they have taken to allow people to go and view the site. I did take myself down to the site last week, and I did find it was very beneficial to actually get a sense of the site and the dimensions of the site, which are very big and very complex. And it does actually make you wonder how on earth all this is going to be pulled together at the end of the day. But I know that's not a planning consideration, but nevertheless, it is a huge development that has taken many months to put together, and we're still not really quite there with the actual planning application. One of my biggest concerns is that this application regarding particularly the touring caravans would appear to be half of it is on the green belt, and I don't think that is right. And I do think that we should consider as a committee whether that is appropriate. Maybe a reduction in the amount of caravans that could go on there for touring would be of some assistance. Mention has been made of the very busy road of Chainhouse Lane. It is exceptionally busy, and we are going to have to put a lot more pressure onto the roads if we've got 26, 27 touring caravans coming along it, along with the Waterloo tankers. So in all, I think there is an awful lot of things that we have to consider as to whether it is appropriate. There is also an awful lot of, I don't know what you call it, really. I mean, people have called it storage. I would call a lot of it is just plain rubbish that's been dumped on the site. And it really is going to be an awful mess to try and pick up all this rubbish and clear it. One of my other concerns is that if the planning permission is given, that the watercourse that actually runs through the site, which at the moment is completely clogged with debris, which I think is part of the Millbrook watercourse that actually flows down to the river. We could take a particular look at that, and maybe if planning permission is given, some consideration should be put in that should be highlighted so that we make sure that that is actually cleared, because as far as I can see at the moment, it's an environmental health hazard, which surprises me that the environmental health haven't actually mentioned that. So all in all, while I'm here this evening mainly to support my residents, who I think you will agree have spoke very effectively about the damage that is going to be done to the green belt, I think what we all want is the best for the site to be made a lot tidier, cleaner, but there are a lot of concerns. The petting area for the animals has been mentioned. I think that is something that will have to be kept a very close eye on if eventually a licence is given to them. So all in all, Mr Chairman and members of the committee, I do think please do consider whether there is too many caravans going on that site, the touring caravans. There already is plenty of storage for caravans, as has been said. There is over 80 caravans stored there, but the touring caravans are a different thing altogether. It's the comings and the goings, and the pressure on the road and the pressure on Chain House Lane. So I'm sure it will take all those into consideration at the appropriate time. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Mr Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Councillor Michael Green.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you for permitting me to speak this evening, and it's nice to see colleagues in the flesh, so to speak. May I first of all begin by thanking Mr Sowerby for a detailed report on what is quite a complicated planning application. I would also thank the residents who have spoken this evening, Mrs Furlow, Mr Worth and Mrs Keller, and I do agree with many of the points that they've made, although time won't permit me to cover all of them, so I'll focus on some particular areas if I may. I do, Chairman, have some mixed views regarding this application for a variety of different uses on that site as has been set out. The application would create some jobs and there would be some benefits to regulating the use of this site, which I do understand, and the arguments that granting approval for this application could visually improve the site. However, I will put forward that this is still a subjective point of view, as approval would lead to the site being expanded with caravan storage, new permanent buildings, a touring caravan site and various activities including Nerf guns, jeeps, archery, clay pigeon shooting and a new road carrying all types of vehicles. Mr Chairman and colleagues, I do have a number of concerns regarding the proposed uses and on the impact upon our highways in the immediate area and in the neighbouring areas. It is also worth pointing out, and I declare an interest as a parish councillor, that the Farrington Parish Council has repeatedly objected to this proposal on the grounds of the impact on residential amenity, wildlife, air quality and the green belt. And I would respectfully ask you to take on board the views of the local council who are closest to the needs of that community in Whitestake. At South Ribble Borough Council, Mr Chairman, we have always been proud of our green belt policy, which serves to restrict urban sprawl, to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another and to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. There are nevertheless justifications for allowing developments in the green belt from time to time where there are special circumstances, such as uses for leisure uses, and that is part of the reason why this application is before us this evening, and some of those uses may indeed be permissible. However, I would flag up some concerns which I still have regarding potential noise impacts upon residents, and I think the Environmental Health Department, whilst not formally objecting or alluding to that in requesting that those activities take place as far as possible from residential properties. But turning to the touring caravans in particular, colleagues will of course be aware that if approval is granted by the committee this evening, this will permit 26 touring caravans to be pitched on site. These will come and go virtually all year round, and whilst not all the pitches might be occupied at all times, that is exactly what you would be giving consent for, colleagues, this evening. I would submit that the impact of having 26 caravans on the openness of the Greenbelt would be significant. I do not believe that very special circumstances exist which outweigh the potential harm to the Greenbelt, and I therefore submit that to permit touring caravans on this site, together with some of the other uses such as the parking spaces and some of the other matters which have been referred to, would be contrary to both our local policies as a council and indeed to the national policies. I would therefore respectfully request you not to allow, in particular, the touring caravans, and to also consider whether some of the other 9 uses are appropriate for this site, and we'll rely on your knowledge and having visited the site. I'm sure you'll have a view on that. Finally, colleagues, if you do take a different view to myself and consider that it might be appropriate to allow some touring caravans to use the site, then I would respectfully refer you to condition 21, which is set out in the report, and the reasons why condition 21 is considered appropriate. In other words, to protect that very openness to which I, Councillor Mrs Smith, and the members of the public referred to. And I would urge you to, in that case, consider tightening up that condition significantly and allowing a maximum of about a third of that number, so maybe a maximum of 8. Of course, that could be amended in due course if they are not causing a major concern, but I think to allow any more than that at this stage will be completely inappropriate, both for residential amenity and, importantly, for the impact upon the Greenbelt. Thank you, Chairman, once again, and I shall leave it with you to consider.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Green. Thanks for your presentation. Do we have the agent stroke applicant? Sorry, it is the agent, Daniel Hughes on Teams.
Yes. Right.
Good evening, Daniel. If you'd like to make your presentation, you do have 4 minutes.
Okay. Just bear with me. Okay. Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm the agent for this application and wanted to take this opportunity to highlight some points in support of the proposal. Firstly, the applicant has always sought to respond positively to all requests from the officers and consultees. The applicant has worked proactively with the council during pre-application discussions, which commenced in 2018, submitting a lawful development certificate application as suggested, and have also worked proactively throughout the planning application process. They have always been transparent with the council, and having owned the land since 1970, are aware of the relationships with neighbouring residents and businesses and keen to maintain good relationships with them all, as has been the case since they've owned the site. The end result of this process has led to the scheme presented at committee today, which in overall terms presents a betterment of the existing land use and condition of the site, with improvements to the impact on the openness of the Greenbelt and reducing current amenity impact on neighbouring properties, amongst other economic, social and environmental benefits discussed in both the officer's report and the planning statement that accompanied the planning submission. Specifically, key changes now incorporated into the scheme to address concerns raised by nearby residents include the confirmation of the field nearest to Newgate Lane to be returned to a field and to be a nil use, the provisions of boundary treatment details in the form of planting to the same field to ensure it is segregated from the main part of the site and will not be able to be used, the provision of additional tree planting along the western boundary, creating a larger buffer and consequently contributing further to the council's climate change targets, the movement of the caravan site boundary a further 3 metres to the east, increasing the buffer to the properties to the west, and further lessening the proposal's impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. Consequently, the proposed development can be considered favourably in the context of the NPPF under paragraph 145 and 146, as the scheme can be said to reduce the site's impact on the openness of the Greenbelt, and as such can be found acceptable in relation to policy G1 of the local plan. Taking this into account, it is considered that the principle of the proposed development is acceptable and there are no material considerations which indicate otherwise. There are also no technical matters which would preclude the grant of planning permission, along with no statutory consultees or objections to the proposal. I'm pleased to note the recommendation is for approval, and I would therefore urge members to accept the recommendation. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Daniel. Short and sweet and to the point. Okay, we can now open this up to committee. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, I'll be brave and go first on this one. Just wait till we get the sound right. Are we okay now? Right. I think, like all members of the planning committee, you've probably spent hours and hours and hours reading this particular one and looking at the policy arrangements and the MPPF and all the various other relevant issues that are involved in this application. It is really, really complex. And talking to the planning officers on the sort of look round there, and obviously, well, we're chatting to them in between time and referring to the application itself. They themselves consider this one of the most complex planning applications that we've actually seen. In fact, they could have dealt with an application for 400 or 500 houses while they've actually been looking at this particular application. So it probably brings into context the difficulty in the decision-making process here. There is the site itself does need regulating. There's absolutely no doubt about that. The regulations that were put on it allow far too much flexibility for the applicant on that site. The whole site, if I'm get it right, and I'm sure Chris Sowerby will correct me if I've got it wrong, they can almost store what they like on that site. And they have planning permission to do so. They have development rights to do so. So it could go on there, and they could store all sorts of unmentionable things all over the place that could not be regulated by this council, and that really would have a residential amenity problem for the residents themselves. So that is a major concern for me, and I'm sure for members of this committee itself. There's lots of things been mentioned here, and I'll mention one, which is county highways. Where on earth they get their information from, goodness knows. For those that have travelled along that road recently, and I do most days, the queue from Chainhouse Lane traffic lights now goes past this site, goes all the way down to Newgate Lane, and sometimes down to Pope Lane. I was attending a planning meeting here only a few weeks ago. It took me 50 minutes to get here, 40 minutes to get through the traffic lights. So there is a huge traffic problem, and it's something County Council, who are the highways experts and the Highways Authority, need to look at, whether it's the phasing of the lights or whatever it is. I thought there was an accident at first, but nothing to do with that. It is like that now on a regular basis. So with caravans going in and out of there, touring caravans, obviously coupled up with a car, if they try to cross there, well, they won't be able to cross because the whole road is blocked off. So I think it's something County Council really do need to have a serious look at. I have real concerns over that. There's discussions about the access that was formed and that the access wasn't there previously. Well, it wasn't. It's been done since. I think we just have to accept that for what it is. Certainly the planners have accepted it, I think, for what it is, in the sense that there was half a track there, there's a footpath there, which is now a lot wider. A hedge has been taken out and a load of MOT limestone has been put in to help that road itself. With regard to the caravan site itself, the touring caravans, that's always been, ever since we've had this application on the go, a real, the main concern for me in particular. And if we go to the page 25 of the report, 7.514, where it says that these are all with a defined curtilage. Well, having double checked on that today, obviously you all have got an amendment to that, and there's approximately 50% on that. Which means basically, I won't say the line has been drawn wrong on the plan, the line has been drawn right on the plan, but it hasn't been taken into account prior to this meeting. I have a huge amount more to say on this, Chair, but I'd be quite happy for other members to come in and just have their say on that. But the minimum I will be asking for on this is for deferral, to confirm that the caravans on that area, if it's not deferral, I think I will be voting for refusal, particularly because of the touring caravans. 26 caravans on that site is far too many, and I think there are other interests within the extra conditions that need to go on that I will be coming back with later, depending on what members say during the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. I have Councillor Yates and then Councillor Hesketh.
Right, thank you. Councillor Smith said most of what I was going to say, so that's saved time. Looking at it, is 50% this site is in Greenbelt, and then when you check with the local plan and everything else, Caravan Park is not a permitted development in the Greenbelt. But I do agree with the storage of caravans on site. And I would suggest that travelling caravans should be removed from the site or reduced in number. This application, so instead of going all the way through it, I would like to second Councillor Smith going for deferment with either a removal of the travelling caravans, or a reduced number.
Yeah, okay. Before I go to Councillor Hesketh, it's been deferred once, hasn't it? Can it be deferred again? Yeah, okay, thanks for that. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This site, as I see it, is rather a unique site. It has many uses at the moment. If we go along with the recommendation of the officers tonight, it would help us to tidy up the site. It would also we would be able to put certain conditions on. If we refuse it, will it stay as it is and be untidy? We have choices here tonight. I do have certain reservations, as Councillor Yates and Smith has said. And I think at this particular point I will reserve my decision and hear what everyone has to say, and I'll make the decision at the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Flannery.
Thanks, Chair. This is a complex application, but I'm just going to take it on the merits of what's in front of us. First of all, the residents spoke well. It's always good to see representation, and it's good to see it in the building tonight, so well done there. Councillor Smith spoke well and represented the residents, as she always does, so well done also on that one. But there's a fine balance here between investment, development, protection of the green belt, opportunities, employment. That's where the complexity comes in, and the use of this site is complex. And I think one of the residents pointed out the many uses which we have before us. But also the officer's done a good report. But even when you look at the actual description of the development in the paperwork, it's one of the longest I've seen. There's also, as Councillor Hesketh pointed out, we visited the site. We went one weekend to see it, and it's in much need of investment. And I think also you've got to try and support and endorse local businesses who are trying to invest at this time. That's also a fair balance to consider. The adjacencies are challenging, there's no doubt about it, and there's been some comments about the path and the road, etc. but it is fairly balanced. It's complex. There is 28 conditions already. But I'm sort of going towards the Councillor Smith's idea of a deferment because of the complexities and what Leslie said before in terms of she wants to work with the development, the site owner is encouraging. And I think that's where we sort of probably need to be looking at with this, because we want everyone to take a little bit from it, no one to lose, and a bit of compromise. So I'm sort of minded to go with the option of deferment too. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mary Green.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, as has already been said, the purpose of the Green Belt is to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment of any sort. If this development goes ahead, that won't be the fact. The greenhouses that are there now are going to be removed. They're actually allowed in Green Belt, but they are going to be removed. So that aspect of Green Belt has gone. The petting zoo, I could possibly live with because it's more of an animal agricultural type of thing, and it sits in with the bird sanctuary and bird of prey and garden centre. I don't really have an issue with that. What I do have an issue with is that I feel that there's an inappropriate use of the storage. There's already 90 caravans with permission, but there's going to be 40 extra on the storage, plus 26 tourers, plus a caravan facilities building with shower block, etc., taking 74 square metres up, car parking for 30 spaces, and one of the open buildings changed into a shop to facilitate the caravans. This tantamount, in my reckoning, is the creation of a caravan park and entertainment centre as well, which in itself is an inappropriate development in Green Belt. The play area, there's a static with office. It's a complete inappropriate development in Green Belt. This is how I feel. There's going to be an area of electric crazy bus cars, combat games, which are going to run at the moment from 9 till 6, but I believe in the report the applicant wants it running later in the summer months, and have special events, Halloween, bonfire night, Christmas, etc. And all this that has been stated will create traffic and potential noise for that area and the residents living there. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a NIMBY and a killjoy. You know, these ideas are great, but I don't feel that it's in a suitable position or a suitable place for them. The proposal is contrary to Green Belt policy, loss of privacy, increased traffic and movements on Chainhouse Lane, which has already been stated that it's a very, very busy road. There's potential noise coming from a caravan site. There could be people playing music while all hours. There could be some antisocial behaviour, or people generally playing the games just quite innocently, enjoying the game and being quite vocal with it, which can disturb the residents. The car parking spaces constitute an inappropriate development on Green Belt. I don't know whether the caravans are going to be on hard standing or on grass. If they're on hard standing, once again, that's contrary to Green Belt. The touring caravan pitches, the creation of the access road and car parking all affect the openness of the area. And the fact the applicant wants the site to only be closed 1 month in the year. So this is going to be a constant problem, if there is a problem with the residents, for 11 months of the year. On policy 17, it states on page 24 of the core strategy, they expect the new buildings to take account of the character and appearance of the local area. At the moment, there's only Greenbelt activities in that area, farming, garden areas, people's gardens. There's nothing towards this application at all in that area at the moment. The lighting can also be a problem, and you've got to have low-level lighting on a caravan site, which can affect people, the lifestyle, can affect the wildlife, the birds, bats, whatever you want to say. So lighting is a problem as well. And I feel that even whether this application is passed or not, surely if it's a bad site and untidy, there can be some enforcement in tidying that site, whether the applications goes forward or not. And I don't feel it's a reason for the application to go forward just to get the applicant to tidy up. That should happen anyway. So all in all, I've not really heard anything that changes my mind on what I've read in the report and listened to the residents. I really feel for them. It's going to be a life-changing situation down there. And it is a lovely area. It is a lovely area. So I feel that I'd like to propose refusal, if that's possible, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Green. So that's so you're proposing refusal, Councillor Green, yes? Okay, thanks for that. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. Most of what's been said tonight, I would struggle to disagree with, frankly, from all sides. In particular, after visiting the site myself, as many of us did, Councillor Margaret Smith mentioned, for example, the watercourse that's very clogged up and kind of worrying, really, the condition of it as to where that's feeding in as well. And I think some kind of development like this, if it encourages that to be cleared up as well, is a benefit. I certainly have a massive sympathy for the development of the site and the use of it as business. It's clearly very run down at the moment, is a large part of it. And the access, which I appreciate, is fairly significantly different to what was with this road that now goes there. It would have been left landlocked without it, in fairness. So I have a lot of sympathy for that having been done. I would definitely agree with the element of the touring caravans, where almost 50% of that area is basically green belt, in that it's agricultural, and if that could be retracted to some degree, so to remove that element of it to nil use, I would certainly be very supportive, probably overall, of the whole scheme. I remember we had discussed it on the day of the visit with a number of us, where the layout's a little bit odd as well, where they've actually put the touring caravans down the far side, which means you're actually passing a lot of the storage and so on, and it would have probably made more sense for it to be near some of the more activity-based side of things and the shop and so on at the other side of the site. I've no problem with things like the petting zoo and so on. As far as the archery soft stroke nerf element, probably should have declared an interest in that. My son has to go to Bolton for airsofting quite frequently, which I am joking with that, but it would save me a lot of time if it was somewhere near my house that I could take him. On a more serious note of that, it's an open field at the moment, and there's no particular plan on the. There's nothing showing on the plan that would represent the kind of site that an airsoft site could be used on. So you'd have to have terrain, basically. You have to have some kind of bits to fight over, so to speak. Whereas with an archery site, clearly you need it completely open. In addition, the size of the field and length of the field, you'd clearly have to shoot long ways for archery to be of any use whatsoever. And if you're firing towards the fields to the opposite side, you've got the potential for arrows travelling that way. And if you've got it going towards the road, there's an obvious problem there. And there's no fence or a catch fence in the world that's going to stop a compound bow arrow from experience. You'd probably need a fairly large earth berm, basically, at one end of the field, to whichever direction arrows are being fired, to protect from that. But again, with little things like that, a tweak perhaps in the position of where the touring caravans are, to further on towards the recreational element, and I say an earth berm to protect arrows, basically, if they're going to use it that way, or again, more description of what the land's going to look like if they are going to use it as a kind of combat zone, because clearly there will have to be some established terrain and so on there to make it useful. Overall, I think the deferral idea is probably best, and if they came back with things that address those, I'd be very inclined to approve something like this.
So just to get this clear, the touring caravans,
yeah,
if we were to put a condition on the application to reduce them by 50%, you're saying you'd be happy with the application?
I am, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Chris and other officers for the detailed report on the site visit. I think I agree with other members, it was very useful. I'm not going to go over arguments that have already been made. I think a key point to this, from my opinion, is this application will actually provide greater protection for residents than what is currently in place. And I think that's important to note. I do agree with the residents in terms of the concerns about traffic on Trainhouse Lane. But unfortunately, our hands are tied as a committee because LCC has stated they've no concerns. I would urge members of this council who have waiting at LCC to maybe to pass those concerns on. I think a lot of the concerns that were raised with the residents, I think, were valid ones. But I do think the conditions are quite stringent in all 28 of them in the report. And we have a duty to obviously protect those residents, the green belt and the residential amenity. But I do think we also have a duty to support local businesses, particularly in a difficult economic period. I think this application, it brings a different element to South Ribble. I think it will bring new people to South Ribble, tourism to South Ribble, people to South Ribble who don't necessarily maybe come to South Ribble before. And that is a massive bonus, I think. That's a huge positive in my mind. In my view, the sticking point here is the touring caravans. And I think the residents spoke very well. And I think there was a compromise to be made at this point. And I would be willing to compromise on that because I think this is a fantastic application. I really do. I think it would bring a lot to the area and to the wider borough of South Ribble. And I'm very happy to support it. Taking that into context, I also want to support the residents in terms of their concerns. And I think I too would be happy with the restriction of 50% of touring caravans on the site. And if that was implemented within those conditions, I would be very happy to for approval on that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Hands are going up everywhere at the moment. Councillor Watson, I will allow it.
Just very quickly, with the 50%, which I completely agree with, it would be in mind of the part that is greenbelt, agricultural use not being used, and either that or Shucksbury.
Yeah, I thought that would go without saying.
I just wanted to double check.
We will put that into the conditions. Councillor Donoghue, then Councillor Moon.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to go along with what Councillor Adams said, and if we could limit the number of touring caravans, I've got no problem with that at all.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Donoghue. Councillor Moon.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Adams literally took the words off my piece of paper when he said that our hands are tied. I think when you pick up an application like this and there's no statutory consultee objections, it puts us as a planning committee already in a difficult position, because all we can do is balance what we've got here and what we've got from yourselves against what the planning law is saying to us. So I start from a position where we've got no objection from a statutory consultee. So whilst we've got all our concerns, we can go nowhere with them because we're just running up against a brick wall. And then move on to the bit where I think we have got a conversation to have, and that's the impact on the openness of the Greenbelt. And I might be very unpopular in what I'm about to say, and I'm sitting very close to you guys. So when I read pages 24 and 25 of this report, I personally come down in a very similar place to where the officers have come. That actually, when you balance off what's already on this site, granted I accept that some of it shouldn't be there and has been done in a way that we isn't helpful for the relationship with residents, but it's there. And again, we're tied, it's there. We've got lawful uses on this site. We've got areas of lawful use. We've got existing and proposed, and the difference is a negative. It's less. When you add those, do the maths, we've got less development on the site if we go forward with what's in front of us, less, not more. So to me, that's a reduction in the impact on the openness. I look at the field that's already got a lawful use for storage, but it's going to be turned back to field. You have to weigh that then into the mix.
Sorry, it's not. The bit that's being used is already not used.
But it's got a law. I'm going on the report that's in front of me.
We did give you 4 minutes. If you could just let the council continue, please.
I'm more than happy for a planning officer to put me right, but I'm going on the information that I think I'm reading in front of me and my understanding of it. So for me, I would come down in a position where if the majority of this planning committee wanted to defer this application to take into consideration what the residents are saying and the concerns here and go back to an applicant and talk about this touring pitches, fine, I genuinely can go with that. I wouldn't like us to put an arbitrary figure on that because there is a business behind this as well and it has to be viable. And if we just axe out 50% of touring caravans and that's not then viable, we've not done anybody any favours at all. So if we're going to defer, Chair, and that's the feeling of the committee, I can sit with that as long as we're going back to an applicant and we're looking at what is viable. If it came back to this committee, Chair, then I think I would struggle in these current facts to go against this application. I think it's a fine balance, but I think it comes down on the side of the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Moon. Chris Sowerby wanted to come back in.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I was just trying to think of what process might be best to go down, depending on what the committee. Sorry, I'm probably best to have turned on my camera, aren't I? Just hearing a voice in the cloud. I think, whereas condition 21, that's clearly gives a fixed number in terms of the permitted number of touring caravan pitches, and that condition that could quite easily be changed by the planning committee if they are fixed, come to an agreement on a number. Clearly behind that there are a number of plans, some of which detail the pitches. So whereas you might be, but to amend that condition, you might be controlling the actual number of caravans on the site. If the application is approved with an amended condition 21, you are actually approving a layout that includes areas of hard standing for 26 caravan pitches. In that instance, I mean, deferral is potentially an option. My question to my colleagues and to legal would be whether or not it might be worth delegating for the members to be minded to approve the application subject to an amendment to that condition, with the decision delegated to the chairman and the director, and that is based on an amended plan being submitted that reduces the number of the number of plots to the number of permitted caravans, and if no agreement can be reached with the applicants, the application then can be brought back to committee again to be considered, as it's currently submitted or in another format. It was just to raise that query, really.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Well, we've got proposal for refusal, proposal for approval with amendments, proposal for deferment. Where do we go from here? Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, if we look at the plan itself and look where the Greenbelt line is rather than the lawful development line, which are two different things. There's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 caravans in that particular area, plus 2 pieces of access road that wouldn't be needed. touring caravans shouldn't be on that part of the development site at all. It's quite clear that they are inappropriate in Greenbelt. The report says so itself, and many other areas have turned them down, including the planning inspector, with regard to touring caravans in Greenbelt. The caravans on the other side, I don't think we have we do have a say, but I think if it actually went to a planning inspector, I think we would actually lose that, in the sense that it has storage, and it is open land. Yes, it is in Greenbelt, but it's previously developed land, that part of it, and I think we have a real problem with that. My main concern is, as I said earlier on, is protecting the residents of that particular area from what they perceive will be residential amenity or lack of it, and I think they're quite right with that. There'll be cars driving down, there'll be headlights on, there'll be caravans there, and I think it is inappropriate. Some of the other areas with regard to what the petting thing, that there are some around. There's just, there was one over in Samlesbury area that went seriously wrong, and the Environmental Health took that particular people to the High Court, and it was actually the biggest fine that's ever been had by anybody in a court from South Ribble, because they didn't have washing facilities and cleaning facilities, and that's not clear on this particular thing, but that's something for Environmental Health to develop. As if it went forward, they would have to make sure that was legally safe. So I don't really have too many problems with the other areas. The storage is there, we can't affect it. They can store what they like on it. All these extra tankers that they want to buy, they can be stored on that green land there. And that's what I want to protect. And I think by reducing the number, and we don't have to be specific, but if we keep it to that previously developed land, if you like, which is the lawful development side that has a certificate, I think that would go for me. I mean, I spoke to Chris obviously earlier on this afternoon when I was pointing the difficulty out that particular line, and he was saying at the time that he thought that deferral might be the best way, so they can sort out exactly where this line is, because it's a bit vague at the moment. So I could go for that one, because I think, to be quite honest, the residents might not like it. I can feel a knife in their back at the moment, but nevertheless, in my opinion, and it is my opinion, that protects them more than not doing it. So, and on that basis, I would go for that. But we'll see what the legal department has to say about how we word that, if that is the proposal going forward.
I've got Councillor Flannery first, and then I'll bring you in, Stephen. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Just for clarity, just to clear this up from where I'm coming from, this application shouldn't be refused. A deferral or fall is on the basis of a missing link, which always seems to happen. We find ourselves in the middle of an applicant who wants to invest and improve the site, and residents who want some compromise in terms of what they're looking for. So the missing link here is some sensible dialogue, some good practice, which puts both parties together. And I think a deferral could achieve that, and then it comes back for, as Councillor Moon and Councillor Adams says, for a positive outcome. But that's the reason why I'm saying either defer or fall, but it shouldn't be refused. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Flannery. Stephen?
Yeah, it was really just to pick up on what Councillor Moon said. I mean, there may be a number that they need to be economically viable for the business to operate. You know, an arbitrary dropping it to 14 might mean that they can't operate the shop. It might mean that they're reliant on the numbers from that to add to the petting zoo and so on and so forth. So I wondered if they should be given the opportunity to sort of flip those numbers into the area where they've got the lawful development certificate for the storage of the caravans and reduce the numbers of the storage while still sustaining the number of caravans that they need to make the business operate. And then that area of Greenbelt that we're concerned about is retained as Greenbelt.
Okay, thanks for that, Stephen. Right, Councillor Moon.
Thanks, Chair. I was going to say, not to sum up what Stephen's just said, then there's plenty of other areas on this site. Again, correct me if I am wrong in my knowledge, but there's plenty of other areas on this site where they could put touring caravans and still take this application forward as it is, just with a logistically different view. So the idea that we could do something, defer and give, I don't know how the committee feel about this, but give that over to the director, yourself, to, you know, as long as we're not going above the 26, you know, if we're taking it as is now, but we want a different configuration that respects that area, they can speak to the residents, compromise on this position, and then defer that so it's not coming back into committee. Maybe that is a compromise position for everybody, us, applicant, residents, and it moves this situation forward. But I don't know how others feel about that. But I wouldn't want it any more than the 26. It'd have to be as is, just in a different place.
Before I bring in Councillor Adams. Chris Sowerby, you wanted to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to bring up the proposed site layout again, just to clarify a point to Planning Committee. What I'm hearing is that some of the members feel that the proposal slightly tips the balance in terms of there being a greater amount of development, which tips it in terms of making it unacceptable. Some of the members refer to that the area which is agriculture should remain agriculture, and that the touring caravans should only be permitted in the area that's subject to the lawful development certificate. What I wanted to highlight to Planning Committee was that this area here in red, that is the area that is subject, or part of the area that's subject to the lawful development certificate, which has the touring caravans in. It's the area to the right of that, which is agriculture. Now, it's not fixed for the Planning Committee to seek that the touring caravans are only located in this area and this area returned to Greenbelt. There is the option there for the Planning Committee to look at the wider sites, and I think the residents may prefer an option where it is, rather than have the lawful development area subject to the caravans, it would be for this area to be turned to the open field, and for caravans to shift eastwards further away from the residential properties. So rather than have an island of touring caravans with an open field on the left and an open field on the right, it would make more sense from a residential amenity perspective, as well as openness of a Greenbelt perspective, to have development consolidated within the site, and it could potentially be a buffer area here which is formed. That's the point that I just wanted to make. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to support Councillor Moon in terms of her proposal. I think, for me, I don't think this needs to come back to committee. I think if it can be delegated to the Director of Planning and yourself as Chair to listen to the concerns of residents, and if we are able to, whether we move the touring cars to another place or whatever that may be, that eases the concerns of residents, then I think that's what we should do. And I'm quite happy to support Councillor Moon with that proposal.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. I agree with you. As councillors, we're here to serve the public, and they have obviously got huge concerns about this. I'd just like to bring Councillor Yates in.
Right, thank you, Chair. The first proposal from Councillor Smith and seconded by myself was removal or reduced number. That was to allow officers to go back to the applicant, have a look at it in detail, and come back to the committee with a better recommendation that's on now. I wouldn't agree with saying no disrespect to yourself, Chair, but I wouldn't put it to the Chairman and the Head of Planning to go and make that decision. That is really a committee decision, and we should be doing it as a committee and saying, let's defer it, let's go back to the site, see what we can do on the site with the application and come back, and most likely when we come back we'll know exactly what the developer can work with. We'll most likely be in a lot better place, and we can move it and get it through as a committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Yates. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I want you lot to decide it. I don't want to do it. It should be a committee decision, this. It's massive. And it needs to be agreed by all of us, not just by me and the director. Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think if it was quite a simple change, then you could delegate it. But I think it's the consequential elements of this. If you did remove that element that we've discussed, I think there may well be consequential changes elsewhere on the site, which I think would tip it beyond something minor that you could delegate to myself and Chair. So I'd probably suggest deferral, not prejudging any vote tonight, but I think deferral would be a better option because there will be consequential changes elsewhere in the site, which we do need to probably discuss, I think, as well.
Fantastic. Councillor Lomax.
Yeah, thanks. I'm actually quite excited by this development because, I think it will do a lot for the area. However, there are a lot of issues in it, but I would like to move it forward. But I do think we should go for deferral and let it come back. It's the best way. I wouldn't want you to make the decision because it would be huge. But, I am excited for us with this application, but we just need to iron it a little bit out with a deferral. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Lomax. Can we, we've been debating an hour and a half on this now. Can we put deferral to the vote? Sorry, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, only briefly, Chair. I was just going to say that certainly it should be a committee decision. It shouldn't be an officer decision at all. I would not vote for that, and I'm sure, well, you obviously wouldn't yourself, so I think that's fair enough. I've heard nothing here this evening that would have changed my mind. It's the touring caravans that are the really difficult area, and obviously the reinstatement of a piece of land to green belt or green field or non-use. There are quite a few other issues with regard to the quality of some of the fencing and the hedges and all the various other things that need to be discussed. But for me, I'm certainly not excited by the development at all. I'd rather see the greenhouses up and them growing plants as what they should be, rather than taking the greenhouses down. And if the greenhouses were up and growing plants in a proper way, those huge, great articulated vehicles that come all the way from Holland on a daily basis driving down that road wouldn't need to be there. But that's not an option for this evening. But nevertheless, if you know that what's happening down there, what's happening with these big vehicles that come down there all the way from Holland, not very environmentally friendly. The greenhouses are, of course. So, but if I could just reiterate, Chair, I propose deferral to start with, and I will still go for deferral. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, well, rather than asking you to all vote on it individually, is anyone against deferral? Councillor Mary Green. Oh, Councillor Moon.
I'm not particularly against deferral, but I would like us to be very clear on what are we deferring, because some people have said one thing, touring caravans, 26 of them, move them east, west, whichever way you want to go. And then we've got other issues being brought up. And I fear we've been here before with applications where we defer on a particular thing and then it comes back and a big debate is opened up again. And I think for me, as a planning committee, we do have a responsibility, absolutely to residents, but to applicants too. We have to be fair and balanced, and this has been going on for quite some time. There's a lot on here beyond 26 touring caravans that not much has been said about, there's not been much issue with. So I think I'd be more comfortable, Chair, before I vote on this, to know exactly what message are we sending back to this applicant? If we're deferring as a committee, on what, to look at what, and I take on board what the director said, that there can be a ripple effect, but let's be clear on where we're asking the applicant to start from. Personally, I think that's only fair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Mary Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I too not happy with you being put in a position to decide. That's not fair. It's too big an issue. The committee should decide on this. And may I just say that I'm not being awkward by going forward for refusal, but the point is, we're always asked in planning to decide on a particular application in its standing as that application. Now, it may well be it goes away for deferral if that's what's decided, come back with a totally different thing, and I can look at it a different way. But we're supposed to vote on an application as it's brought before us this evening. I'm concerned that at the moment, well, mostly for a long time, Greenbelt isn't being protected as it should be. It very often, for every time we have a Greenbelt issue comes up, we're sort of asked to look at differences, if we can change this, if we can put this, loss of business, loss of this, loss of that, and it's being diminished and devalued all the time. And I think we need to be really careful about this. But I mean, I'm against going for deferral as this application stands this evening. I'm against this application. Not to say that if it comes back, I would be voting the same way. I look at each issue as it's brought before us on committee, and I think it's important it's brought before the committee. Thank you.
Councillor Yates, then Councillor Adams.
Right, thank you, Mr Chairman. I think we've debated this to death. I think most of us know which way we want to go, and we've told the officers exactly what we want to do with the deferral. So I propose move to the vote, Chair.
But what are we going to, what conditions do we want to put in the deferral?
The deferrals for officers to go away and look at, we talked about right at the beginning, was a removal or a reduction of the travelling caravans. That's a deferral. We're asking our officers to go and talk to the applicant on that subject. That we haven't argued with anything else. Thank you, Chair.
Right, okay, so we had a proposal for refusal. Do I have a seconder for refusal? No, and we also had a proposal for deferral and a seconder for deferral. Are we happy to go to the vote on the deferral? Okay, Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Donoghue.
4, Chair.
Councillor Flannery. 4. Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Hancock. 4. Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Lomax.
4, Chair.
Councillor Melia.
4.
Councillor Moon.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Watson.
4, Chair.
Councillor Yates.
4, Chair.
And I am also for deferral. Jodie, will you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Members have voted for deferral of the application of Turberry House Nursery, Chain House Lane, Whitestick.
Square Longton. Thanks, Councillor Hesketh. And Linda, if you'd like to. That's mine. We'll get it. Hopefully, passing me that water. Okay, Linda, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
This application is a resubmission of an application which was refused by committee back in December and relates to part of the garden area of numbers 5 and 6 East Square and is for the erection of a detached 2-bedroom bungalow. The access again is proposed off Longcroft, which is set to the north, with 2 parking spaces to the front of the proposed bungalow. The main garden area will be set to the west and will be set a minimum of 1 metre off the eastern and southern boundaries. So this is just presentation of the front and the rear elevations. This is the west elevation, which will face into the garden area, and that's the eastern elevation. The bungalow will have a footprint of 11 metres by 8 metres with a pitched roof 3 metres to the eaves and 7.1 metres to the ridge. So this is just a view of the street scene from East Square. So the development is into this area here. And this is the proposed access point off at the head of Longcroft. And then that's just the adjacent bungalow at number 5 Longcroft. And as you can see, that's the side elevation of 6 East Square and then the side elevation of 5 East Square. And this is the side elevation of number 5 Longcroft, which has an attached garage. So a total of 18 neighbours have been notified, and to date 9 letters of objection have been received. No objections have been received from statutory consultees. It is considered that due to the scale and siting of the bungalow, this would have a detrimental impact upon the adjacent residential properties by undue loss of privacy, overshadowing, and would appear overbearing, and therefore the application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Linda. Don't have any registered speakers, don't have any members not on committee, and I don't have the applicants or the agent. So I will bring it straight into committee. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will go for refusal on the conditions or the reasons within the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Flannery.
I'll second that refusal on the basis that when these buildings were designed in this way, it wasn't designed to add another dwelling in there either. So yes, I'll support that refusal.
Councillor Adams.
Yeah, very straightforward for me. I'd support the refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Do I have any more proposals? Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, I'd certainly support that. I mean, this is garden grabbing again, and it's just not on.
Thanks, Councillor Hancock. I think we should send planning applicator to the people who apply for planning. We should be sending them a message. You can't build in somebody's back garden. Right, okay, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Donoghue.
For refusal, Chair.
Councillor Flannery.
For refusal.
Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Harry Hancock.
For, Chair.
Councillor Chris Lomax.
For, Chair.
Councillor Christine Melia.
For refusal, Chair.
Councillor Caroline Moon.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
For refusal.
Councillor Gareth Watson.
For refusal, Chair.
And Councillor Barry Yates.
For refusal.
And I am also for refusal. Jodie will now confirm the outcome of the vote.
Councillors have voted unanimously for refusal of the application for 5 East Square, Longton.
Thanks very much, Jodie. Okay, item number 8 on this evening's agenda is 91 Hennell Lane, Walton le Dale. and I will invite Catherine to present the item. I did a site visit, by the way, yesterday.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use from 6-person care home, which is in a Class C3, to a 7-person care home, which is in Class C2. It involves the demolition of an existing single-storey detached garage and the erection of a single-storey detached building to provide additional care home accommodation with additional car parking spaces. So the Oaks is a specialist residential service for up to 6 adults with autism and learning disabilities, and to provide the opportunity for one of the residents to live more independently, the applicant is seeking consent for a small separate unit. This would enable the staff to support somebody in that separate unit whilst balancing areas of independence. This would then allow a new resident to live in the main house, and there will be a total of 7 people, which requires the formal change of use at the site. So the application site is identified here. We've got 91, that's the address at Hennell Lane. It's located about 1 kilometre south of Wantley Retail Park, and this part of Hennell Lane is a cul-de-sac with the application site the last property. 89A is the one that's adjacent to it, and again we've got Thornley that backs on at this part of the site as well. This is the location of the existing garage. Okay, this provides an aerial view, and we can see here the location of the unit, and you can see also G7, policy G7, which is green infrastructure for Cockshot Wood. This is the A6 that runs on this boundary, and these is just a bit of an aerial view of the location of the residential properties most affected. And then this provides a site plan. So the existing building is located here, and previously the application provided for the garage to be demolished and the separate unit of accommodation to be located in the location of the garage. We expressed concern to the applicant about the impact on the residential amenity of both 89A here and also this property here due to the close proximity to the boundary. And on that basis, the applicant has provided a revised location to the other part of the site and has reduced the building probably by about 17%. This gives you an idea of the elevations associated with the independent unit. Its external wall construction will be timber frame. It's about 9 metres by 7 metres with a height of 4 metres. The windows are to be double glazed with acoustic vents, and they're the subject of a condition. And just a couple of photographs. So you can see at this location here is where the garage is, and that's where it was going to be. And this is where we had the concerns due to noise and impact on residential amenity. And then the next photograph demonstrates this is where it would be located. I think it's probably important to say that the applicant agreed to relocate the unit and has also worked with the Environmental Health Officer to provide a noise management plan up front, of which the details are on the update sheet. We reconsulted the neighbours on the revised location and have received no objections. Lancs County Council Highway have confirmed that they still want the garage demolished in order to provide car parking spaces. So the application, Chair, is recommended for approval, subject to the rewording of condition 3 on the update sheet. Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation, Catherine. Okay, we don't have any registered speakers on this. The ward councillors aren't speaking on it. But we do have the agent, Julian Bolitho. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
We certainly can.
So, Bolitho it is, just for the record, but it's that's as close as most people get. So I won't take up too much time now. I'm conscious you've had a long session already. I did have a statement prepared, but I think the key thing is just to echo what your officers are saying, really, that the applicant has responded positively to all comments of both neighbours and your officers have substantially amended the scheme, moved the building to a less sensitive part of the site. The building has also been reduced in size. There will be more parking available on site, which is what residents want. And we've gone from a position where we had a site neighbour objecting to no longer having that neighbour objecting, because the applicant has responded constructively and amended the scheme. And probably I don't need to say any more than that unless you have any queries. Beyond, respectfully request the committee endorses the recommendation of your officers. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. I can now bring this into committee. I have Councillor Adams, Councillor Flannery, Councillor Yates, Councillor Green. In that order, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, very simple and straightforward for me, this one. It's great to hear an applicant listening to concerns of residents and officers and amending the application. You know, working collaboratively is a great example to everyone within South Ribble of how we should go about planning within our borough. I think that's excellent to hear. I think it's also great to hear about promoting independence for people with autism or additional needs. I think that should be something that we should highlight and something that we should also promote as well. So very happy to go for approval, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Adams. Councillor Flannery.
I'm going to second that. Good application, good report, and a much needed good service at South Ribble. So I'm seconding approval. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Yates.
I was going to second it, Chair.
Councillor Mary Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was more of a question, really. It looked like a one-storey building. Do you know which direction the windows are pointing, and is there anything between the windows and the next property? Is it number 87, the property at the back? Is there anything dividing that new extension with the residents' previous property there?
Yeah, they moved it into a different corner, haven't they, Catherine?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Green. There is a separation distance because there's a garden area that separates the building from the boundary that you're most concerned about. So that is considered acceptable, and there is quite a high boundary treatment that separates the two anyway, and it's right in the corner now, away from the residential properties. It's in the furthest position it can be without impacting on the rear garden of the property that you're most concerned.
So is there a fence or trees in between the
Yes.
two? Right, yeah, so that there couldn't be any sort of overlooking or anything like that into the residents' garden?
Okay, it's a single story, so there won't be any of the overlooking that you're concerned about, and it is the building that you can see on the presentation is actually an outbuilding. That's not the residential property itself.
Right, okay, thank you. And also, I'm just a bit concerned because I know there's a care home near where I live at Long Minigate there, and they've got residents in there with similar problems. And although it's on Long Minigate itself, the residents of across the road, Bladedyke and Frosdale and all those, they're constantly complaining that they're upset because they can hear the residents making a lot of noise even during the night. And they get very upset because they say they don't know whether it's part of the residents' illness, as you might say, or condition, or whether they're being ill-treated. So the residents get very upset about it and they're constantly complaining with me, and that was just what I was concerned about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you want me to answer that, Chair?
Sorry?
Do you want
I could reply to this one because they don't really go together, the two applications, because the one on Long Minigate has residents opposite. This is at the end of a cul-de-sac, on which where the A6 cut the Hennell Lane in two years and years ago, and the spatial difference between the two, and it's just a single story building anyway. Councillor Smith, did you want to come in?
Yeah, only quickly, Chair. I mean, I think it's a good application. The residents that live locally have got no issues with it. We've just received the report, which includes the staff induction and training process, and also the proposed building, the acoustic mitigation. I think it's a good application, so I'll be voting for it. Thank you.
Okay, so we've had a proposal for approval. Yes, thank you for that. And a seconder for approval. Councillor Moon.
Chair, I'm very happy with the application. I have no vested interest, but those people who know what I do for a living will know that to see this in front of me with single occupancy accommodation for somebody who can be enabled to move on and live independently within a safe space just warms my heart. What I don't understand really is why it's here. And I do recall, Chair, you saying when you took over as Chair that you were going to be really firm on if ward councillors want to bring something in, bring it in for good reason and show up. So why is it here with an application that's very positive, it's got no objections to it, statutory or otherwise, and we've got it here? So is there a good reason?
Yeah.
Or do you need to toughen up, Chair?
No, I can tell you the reason, because when the first application went in, the neighbours objected. So Councillor Campbell asked for it to come to committee. That's correct, isn't it? But then in the meantime, I can't, he's a fellow councillor and I've got a code of conduct to uphold. So they amended the application basically, and Councillor Campbell forgot to withdraw the objection. So that's why it's.
Chair, through you then, I will be firmer with my fellow councillor because it doesn't need to be here.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I support what everyone's said so far. Particularly, if anyone who's known me for more than 5 minutes probably realises that I've got significant autistic tendencies myself. I do consciously recruit as well someone in my business who has autism. So this is absolutely agree with Caroline. This something really does cheer me up to see.
Councillor Adams.
Just quickly, Chair, I just want to say that people with autism or any other additional need can live anywhere they want in South Ribble. If they make noise or not, we are not here to say where people can and can't live. Let's be absolutely clear on that. You know, these people deserve our support, and that is what we should give them. Thank you.
Well said. Right, we've had a proposal. Caroline Amelia. Christine, Councillor Amelia.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate actually what Caroline said, Councillor Moon said, and what Will said about people being able to live where they want, and anything that enhances their life is very good. And I really, really approve this application. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Amelia. Okay, so I've had a proposal and a seconder for approval. We don't have any other proposals, do we? Okay, let's go to the vote then. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Donoghue.
For, Chair.
Councillor Flannery.
For.
Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Harry Hancock.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh. Councillor Lomax.
For.
Councillor Amelia.
For.
Councillor Moon.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Yates. For. And I am also in favour of this application. Jodie, can you confirm the outcome of that vote, please?
Councillors have voted unanimously to approve the application for 91 Hennell Lane with conditions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Jodie. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9, 249B, Station Road, Bamber Bridge.
Right, thank you, Chair. So
So this application site was part of the former Lancs and Yorks Public House, which was subdivided and changed use in 2015. The main part of the building and the rear car park is used by Enterprise Car Rentals, and the remainder was for retail use. So the application site is immediately adjacent to the railway and level crossing. Station Road in this area is a mix of commercial and residential, and then there's residential properties to the north and east on Princess Street, as you can see there. So this photograph shows the current building with the Enterprise premises to the northern 2/3 of the premises. The proposal is for a change of use of the premises to a drinking establishment, which is now a sui generis use, together with internal and external alterations. So the existing window will be replaced with aluminium bifold doors and an entrance door, and the front elevation will be clad in distressed timber with signage above. So internally will be a small bar there, which has seating around it, and then there's seating along both side walls. To the rear is a small enclosed yard, which will be used as a smoking area. There's an existing gate into the Enterprise car park, which can serve as an emergency exit, and is controlled by condition 11. The use of the external area is until 2300 hours on any day, and that will be controlled by condition 3. The proposed opening times are 8 AM until 12 midnight Monday to Saturday, and 9 till 12 midnight on Sundays, and this is controlled by condition 10. So, mindful of the proximity of residential properties in the area, Environmental Health requested a noise impact assessment, which was submitted and considered by them. As a result, they have requested a number of conditions be imposed, and these are reported in sections 8.4 to 8.14 of the committee report. So this photograph shows the gated access to the car park, which does not form part of this application site and is retained by Enterprise Rent-A-Car. You can see the rear of properties on Princess Street that back onto the car park. So residents have objected to the proposal, citing that the former use of as a public house caused a living hell, and that patrons used to drink on the car park until 2 in the morning. However, as the car park remains part of the Enterprise business and is not part of the application site, it cannot be used by patrons of the bar. One late letter of representation has now been received, but it doesn't raise any new points of objection. So it's considered that with the imposition of the conditions, the proposal is acceptable and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks for your presentation, Janice. Okay, we don't have any registered speakers. We don't have any members not on committee. And we don't have the applicant or agent either, so I'll bring it into committee and Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we should support this application. These types of businesses over the last 18 months have had a rather rough time, and I think we should support it, Mr. Chairman, and I go along with approval and conditions.
Thanks, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Watson.
I'd like to support Councillor Hesketh in that. It's like when I used to drink many years ago. I frequented this place quite, so I might have been one of those. Yeah, I might have been one of those people out at 2 o'clock. So I do apologise for any residents that might have listened in. I don't do it anymore, but yeah, I would still like to.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Watson. Councillor Donoghue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to go along with what my council colleagues have said and approve this. Thank you.
Okay, quickly moving on. Do we have any other proposals? No. Okay, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Donoghue.
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Flannery.
For.
Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Harry Hancock.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh.
For, Chair.
Councillor Chris Lomax.
For.
Councillor Christine Melia,
For.
Councillor Caroline Moon,
For.
Councillor Phil Smith,
For.
Councillor Gareth Watson,
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Barry Yates. And I am also for approval, and I must say Bamber Bridge might be pretty interesting in 18 months' time. Okay, moving on. Item number 10. Oh, sorry, Jodie, I do apologise, I've got to bring you in. Can you give us the vote, please?
Just to confirm that councillors have voted unanimously to approve the application for 249B Station Road at Bamber Bridge, subject to conditions in the report.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Move on to item number 10 this evening. Runshaw College, Langdale Road, Leyland. Debbie, if you would like to present the item.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for erection of a new building to accommodate T-level teaching space with ancillary works. Proposal site is Runshaw College on, the Leyland campus. To the north is Langdale Road, they're residential at about 50 metres distance. To the west is Holt Brow and Worden Park beyond. To the east are the other campus buildings, and to the south is Woodland. It's within the existing built-up area, and the proposal site is to the west of existing buildings currently used as a lawn. Okay, the proposal is for a two-storey flat roof teaching block to the west of the campus buildings. It's to be known as the Buttermere block. It's 16 metres by 35 metres with the shorter end facing Langdale Road to restrict the impact on the street scene. It's also set back 24 metres from Langdale Road. Pedestrian access will be on the eastern side, again to contain noise and prevent loss of residential amenity to properties on Langdale Road. There will be 12 classrooms and ancillary space over 2 floors. And an area to the southwest of the building will be redesigned to provide for an extra 18 parking spaces. Runshaw is recognised as one of England's highest performing colleges for 16 to 19-year-olds, and there is a national government shift towards alternative education provision. This proposal allows for T-level technical and vocational education in line with the Department of Education directives. Okay, just some visuals. The Buttermere block would be built in white, mid-grey and buff-coloured aluminium and zinc cladding. They would match adjacent buildings. The eastern elevation, which is that one, facing the Patterdale building, it has a large area of curtain wall glazing and the main entrance. The other elevations are just windows, but they're styled in the same way as the adjacent buildings. There will be photovoltaic panels on the roof behind the parapet and the energy efficient construction throughout. Just a photograph showing Langdale Road. It's quite difficult to get photos from the site, so we've used this aerial view instead. Residential opposite, the circulation space and screening between. The screening on the west and the access would be roughly here. So it's screened to some part by the adjacent buildings. And the visualisation of the view from Langdale Road, so residential properties here, and the view from Holt Brow, which is Worden Park on this side. We've got a side-facing view from the east. This is the Patterdale building that's already there, and the rear, which will be viewed from the woodland at the back. We've had 2 objections. They're detailed in your report, but no statutory objections subject to conditions. And we would recommend approval with conditions. There is an update sheet for you, minor changes to 2 of the conditions, but they don't change the basic requirement for those conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that report, Debbie. Right, we don't have any registered speakers. We do have the ward councillor joining us via Teams. Is that correct? Yeah. So, Councillor Ogilvie.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Right, thanks. As one of the ward councillors, the college is a major presence in the Worden part of the ward, and it's a hugely successful educational establishment. Quality educational opportunities are essential for our young people to allow them to meet their career and life aspirations. Runshaw College affords that opportunity to many young people, both in our borough and more widely across Lancashire. The government's introduction of the new T-level qualification is hugely welcome and opens up the option of a technical qualification backed up with the mandatory inclusion of months of experience in the workplace. This proposal will allow Runshaw to meet this new demand. So this new extension to provide state-of-the-art accommodation for teaching of this new qualification is one that I very much welcome. However, we must always be mindful of the impact of any new development on the everyday lives of our residents. I have already had lengthy discussions with senior management at the college on this proposal to discuss its implementation and raise issues that are of concern to local residents. These issues are, in the main, student numbers, traffic, parking, and disruption during construction. I note that the conditions proposed in the report largely seek to address those concerns, which I now wish to comment on. On student population numbers, the report is slightly contradictory. At the beginning, it mentions an increase in student population of 80 students, whilst later on in the report it says that there is no intention for a drive to increase the number of students. In my discussions with the college, it was explained to me that the extension will initially be used to relocate students from older buildings so that those older buildings can be refurbished. Thereafter, a small increase in student population by 2026 is likely, but that's simply due to national demographics within the student age group, which will inevitably lead to a relatively small but greater demand for places. On traffic, I noticed the LCC Highways comments, and I'm particularly pleased to see the one about no reversing onto or out of Langdale Road, plus the fact that all construction vehicles must be accommodated on site, i.e. no parking or waiting of construction vehicles on Langdale Road. If it's approved, I would like to see early visits from planning enforcement in order to ensure compliance with that condition. I think the traffic management plan is absolutely critical in this. My fear is the combination of lots of students arriving early in the morning with buses and cars, at the same time as large construction vehicles wishing to gain access to the same site. So I think that traffic management plan is something that the committee members need to be very, very confident with. On parking, the additional 18 spaces on site's welcome. There are well-known existing problems with parking around the college, but that is something the council, in conjunction with LCC Highways and the police, need to resolve going forwards. And finally, on disruption during construction, the working hours are specified in the conditions. However, experience tells me that, again, if it's possible to have approved, if it is approved, that early visits from planning enforcement should be undertaken to ensure compliance. I don't know whether it's possible within the conditions to actually in some way mandate that early visitation by planning enforcement to ensure compliance can be part of the conditions. That you as committee members are a lot more experienced in that than I am. If that's possible, I'd love to see that. Basically, that's it, Chair. Thank you. I'd appreciate the committee taking on board my comments in reaching your decision. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Ogilvie. Debbie, is it possible to put that condition on?
Yeah.
Of course,
I don't think it is. I don't think it'd stand the test, because you're asking them to do something that they haven't got the control over, our staff. You know, basically they're getting a permission with conditions on, and the college can't control our staff coming. If our staff didn't come, they would be failing in the condition. But we just do our normal good working practice to ensure that visits are made.
Okay, did you hear that, Councillor Ogilvie?
Yes, I did, but I'd just like to hear a commitment that those visits will happen very early on in the construction, just to hammer this in.
I think, as Stephen just reiterated, we do take very seriously enforcement work. All right, I have Councillor Flannery, then Councillor Hesketh, and then Councillor Yates.
Thanks, Chair. Well, the ward councillor, Councillor Ogilvie, always makes sensible points, and it was very comprehensive. So I think what he's articulated was good. But I also agree with our officers in terms of the limits of what we can do. But overall, it's a good application, and it's a good report, and I want to move approval. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Hesketh.
Thank you, Chair. We should be proud to have a college of this nature in South Ribble, Mr. Chairman. This proposal, I think it fits in well and it complements the campus, and it fits in very well with the existing buildings, and I will go along with approval and conditions.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report's very well put together. I agree with all the conditions and agree with the officers as well that every application that we put through is always enforced throughout the development. So I'd be happy to second that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Yates. Councillor Moon.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start by saying I am obviously ward councillor, other ward councillor, and I think everybody needs a fellow ward councillor like Councillor Ogilvie, because quite frankly, he's just done our job for us, hasn't he? He has been liaising with senior officers at Runshaw. I haven't, for obvious reasons, so I'm grateful to him for the work that he's done. Whilst I am supportive of the application, I do want to express openly here tonight my disappointment again about the travel planning. When I'm reading this application, and we know the issues, we all know the issues that having the college, it's fabulous to have it, but it brings with it consequences. And I'm reading a document that says that the travel planning was a disappointment to Lancashire County Council. And I don't wish to sound disrespectful when I say this, but if you can disappoint the highways elements of Lancashire County Council, I think you're doing well. You're going some, really, to disappoint them. And this, for me, it's a massive letdown, And I'm glad it's conditioned. I'm glad it's got to be dealt with before this goes ahead. But it doesn't fill me with the right confidence, actually, in executing this application. So I really hope that Runshaw College are genuinely committed to dealing with the issues we have got with transport for their facility. And on the back of that, I just want to say that in terms of enforcing these conditions, obviously Councillor Ogilvie and I will be liaising with officers, but we have to express this on behalf of residents, because it is not that long ago that I was being contacted in the very early hours of the morning because wagons were idling outside Runshaw College on Langdale Road at 7 o'clock in the morning, waiting to go into that site to do maintenance in that site. So we know it happens. We've got another one going on Langdale Road where they're working at all hours outside of what's been agreed. And it's Councillor Ogilvie and I who are chasing officers to get these things resolved. So make no apology for that we will be on that. It's part of our role as councillors. And I do hope, and I'm confident that the officers will be with us every step of the way in keeping this on track. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thanks, Councillor Moon. Okay, do we have any other proposals? No? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Councillor Adams. For. Councillor Donoghue.
For, Chair.
Councillor Flannery.
For.
Councillor Mary Green. Councillor Harry Hancock.
For, Chair.
Councillor John Hesketh.
For, Chair.
Councillor Chris Lomax.
For.
Councillor Christine Melia.
For.
Councillor Caroline Moon.
For.
Councillor Phil Smith.
For.
Councillor Gareth Watson.
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Barry Yates.
For.
And I am also for, with the conditions. Jodie, will you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Councillors have voted unanimously to approve the application at Runshaw College, Langdale Road, with conditions.
Wonderful, thanks for that, Jodie. Okay, moving on to item number 11. That is Taps and Wine Bar, 2 Chorley Road, Whatleydale. Debbie, could you present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Number 2 Chorley Road is the former Conservative Club. It's within a commercial and residential mixed-use area at the junction of Chorley and Victoria Roads. It's now known as the Taps and Wine. To the east is the petrol station. To the south, there are mainly terraced dwellings. The end terrace is a commercial unit. And beyond that, I beg your pardon, to the west are a pair of semi-detached properties with a car sales business to beyond that. The side elevation of number 8 Chorley Road abuts the site boundary. That's this one here. Site and surroundings are designated by the local plan as a local retail centre. Okay, just the proposal site plan. The application only refers to the forecourt. The building itself has permission for use as a drinking establishment, and that's been long standing. The line following the right-hand side, I do beg your pardon, the thingy, the pointer's come off. There we go. The line following the ramp on the right-hand side abuts the highway, abuts the pavement. Okay, in 2018, permission was granted for change of use from a private members club to A4 drinking establishment use with external works. That permission included conditions that there shouldn't be any external seating or tables, should be no use of the smoking shelter for food and drink, and no floodlights and heaters. The applicant has since installed a seating area which sees him in breach of those conditions and which he wishes to regularise. Other structures which haven't been installed but do need permission are also proposed, and I'll go through those in a second. So in full, the application is for retrospective permission for 4 seating booths. They're on this side. They have an acoustic rear surround 2 metres high and an acoustic roof. The booths are similar to other pubs in the area. We would also seek permission for a new retractable canopy on the front of the seating booth, which would be on this left-hand side. Low luminosity festoon lights and linear heaters, they'd be under the canopy and under the seating booths. And a 1.5 metre high ivy covered trellis fence to the front. That offers some privacy and some noise screening to the residents facing. These are the linear heaters, so they're very innocuous looking things, festoon lighting and the retractable canopy, and that would be cantilevered, so there wouldn't be any support or legs once it's pulled in. The ramped access and the other works have already got permission. Now, the applicant requests outside use for longer than the licence, and in fairness, because of his site circumstances, it is the only A4 drinking establishment in that area that isn't trading. Others within the same retail centre benefit from pavement licences and tend to have historically extended hours. We should note, however, that although on the agenda there is also another proposal with longer proposed hours, it's a completely different context and less proximate to residential properties than this one. This scheme warrants a different approach, and officers feel that a temporary period with hours in line with the approved premises licence is appropriate, but I'll go into that more later on. Okay, the site view from the east, number 8 is behind the seating booths, and this is the acoustic rear and roof. There's going to be an undoubted increase in noise and activity, but it has been a drinking establishment for many years, including outside use. And earlier conditions imposed only prevent sitting, not standing, on the forecourt, which has had a premises licence for outside use already. We also need to take into account the impact of ambient road noise, which is already very high. This wider photo, now it's before the development, it just shows the better relationship between the previously untidy site, which is this one, and properties adjacent and facing, residential and commercial facing, and residential there, commercial here, and behind the photograph is the petrol filling station. There is also a haulage yard behind this property, which I should mention. This photo shows the alleyway, the access way between number 8, which is here, and the acoustic fence and roof to the rear of the seating booth. So the booths face away from this property. They're visible on the right. There are 2 habitable room windows which are also visible on this wall, one at ground floor and one at first floor. Arguably, the ground floor window is more screened since erection of this seating area, and upstairs will have it will be no different than the long-standing open aspect from the forecourt, regardless of whether clients sit or stand. Increased loss of privacy is considered unlikely from the ground floor. Okay, again, an old photograph. It was difficult to get photographs when I was there, but it's number 8 Chorley Road. This is the property that's immediately adjacent. You can see the 2 windows here. This appears to be a secondary living room window, and this appears to be a secondary bedroom window. It just shows the relationship and the untidy state of the business before the applicant took over. Very roughly, and I've drawn that, it's very roughly, the site is where the red box is. Oh, beg your pardon. Okay, the property's been a drinking establishment for many years, and it was confirmed by this committee in 2018 for a change of use from a private club to open air for use. Activity and noise has been present since use began, and you can see from before and after images that the site was visually unappealing. Changes have been done to a high standard, and they result in an upgraded property to the betterment of the area. And whilst considerable in the context of the small site, in design terms are not considered so bad as to warrant refusal. Previous use of the untidy site, therefore, needs to be balanced against betterment resulting from proposed changes, but with increased activity outside. There are no formal statutory objections. We've had 2 letters of representation, one objecting and one which doesn't object, subject to noise management. Environmental Health have originally objected on noise grounds, but a noise survey has since been supplied. It was supplied late in the day and it's not been fully assessed, but there are still concerns. Environmental Health working through those concerns with their acoustician, the applicant's acoustician. It's quite hard to provide valid data relating to noise on a closed premises. The council's remit is to help local business where it can, and the current difficult climate must be considered having regard to recent government directives and extended opening of nearby premises. They're all detailed in full in the report, and there's quite a lot of information relating to that. Under normal circumstances, if we'd had an environmental health objection on noise grounds, it's likely we would have recommended refusal. But officers feel that in order to achieve the best outcome for all parties, to give both the council and the applicant some certainty, which allows the applicant to open his business while noise measures are assessed, we would recommend approval, but with a temporary use condition until the end of January 2022. That allows for full noise assessment, mitigation to be put in place where needed if necessary, and for noise retesting to be done while the property is actually trading. The applicant would then need to reapply to have the temporary condition removed within that period, so that we can bring it back to committee for you to assess a permanent permission. And that will be on the basis that we've had a response by then and whatever mitigation has been put in place by Environmental Health. So to confirm, the recommendation is approval with conditions, including temporary use of external seating areas until the end of January 2022. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Debbie. I don't have any registered speakers. I have the ward councillor, Councillor Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As I say, I'm Councillor Molyneux. I'm the one of the 2 councillors for that local area in question, and I speak in favour of this application this evening. This business has made a welcome addition to the area, and the applicant has done everything possible to make the business work. The change of use to the external front area will provide an additional benefit and give the business a much better chance to be successful. If this application is not approved this evening, I fear it could just tip over the business. where there's been a lot of time and effort put into it, and the area would be at a loss if that was to happen. There is without doubt a number of similar businesses who enjoy the benefits of using their outside areas without the need for the conditions being given to the application this evening. With those concerns in mind, I would ask the committee to vote for approval this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Molyneux. The applicant, Sean O'Hagan, would you like to make a representation? You're limited to 4 minutes, okay? You just press the button that says speak.
Is that okay? Sorry. I was probably going to say a lot more, but from the kind words of Debbie from the planning officer's point of view and from Councillor Molyneux, all I'm going to say is we would prefer to be considered for full approval. I can totally understand Debbie's point of view, but we're slightly wary of the time period we've got, the work that we've still got to do to that outside area to make it look smarter and better, the money we've still got to invest in it, only to have that approval to January 2022. And in that period, we would be monitored. I'm perfectly fine about being monitored, but it's when it's malicious and unfounded complaints we get, and we had such one when we had a previous agreement with planning environmental health to use it temporarily last year that kindly Councillor Flannery organised for us. We then received a complaint and the whole remit of that agreement was changed, and no investigation, as far as I'm aware, was ever taken into that. So although the council staff promised us that if we got any malicious or unfounded allegations, they would investigate them properly, then we weren't prepared to actually put any further money in it. The only reason we've done the work now is because we agreed that we would do it if we got grant funding. We got a Boost Recovery grant to help towards the cost of it, but it determined we had to be completed by end of January 21. So we went ahead and did it on agreement, and we sent all the information to the planning team, what we were doing and everything. So we weren't, as far as I'm aware, technically breaching the planning condition. We like Debbie said, we came first of all to the planning committee in 2018 with a decking area. We was asked to take that area out and come back for change of use in January 19 and submit the decking area again with a fence to divide us between number 8 and the window. It was all about the view, the sight lines at the time. We weren't able to attend the subsequent meeting for that decking area in May of 19 because I was recovering from an operation. It was refused on the grounds, I believe, of the fact the fence we put forward was too high and there was a gap in it to allow for loading that still offered a sight line. We believe that could have been altered by a condition stating the height of the fence and filling the gap, but it was not back. We then had this meeting and changes were made again. We first agreed and then it was not back. We put the fence up. Even now, we were told that if we use the area, when the restrictions were lifted, even now, because of the condition imposed on the first application, that we would then be in breach and that we could be issued with a stop notice. So although other places were using car parks and pavements, we weren't allowed to use our own land to survive it. This is why we're wary of where this is going, that we will get permission, we will invest more money in it, and then that will be withdrawn in January 22. Because things keep changing. Even now, we're told we need a noise assessment survey doing, even though that is the noisiest road you'll probably find in the whole of South Ribble. Anybody who's been there to site will be struggling to hear themselves speak. So we needed this noise assessment survey. Our acoustic technician that we employed at £1,600 to us, cost, had a meeting with the environmental health officer to agree the terms and the methodology into that report. They carried out the survey. They submitted the report only for the environmental health officer to change the remit and move the goalpost yet again. They wanted further information. Our consultant has responded and said, we've done this to the agreed terms. So again, we're worried where this is going. Come to January 22, will this be changed again? Will the goalpost move? We realise it is a difficult scenario.
Mr. O'Hagan?
Yeah. Speed it up, yeah.
I'll give you another 15 seconds.
Yeah. All I say is, psychologically, we don't know if we can last till 2022, never mind financially. My wife is heartbroken. It's difficult. Put a lot into this. We're not millionaires. We put a lot into this. This is our life savings. All gone into it. And we're stopped with this pandemic. We've got a small boy, and we tried to add this additional space. It's been very, very difficult for us. And when you go around and you see other boys with masses of people outside, such as the Hunters, with 200 people outside on a quiet residential estate, we're playing live music all weekend, and we're told that we can't have a few people outside of the front of our bar on a noisy main road.
I need you to finish, Mr.
I'll leave it
O'Hagan.
at that.
Thanks for your presentation. Thank you. Right, I've got Councillor John Hesketh, Will Adams and Barry Yates.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application is following the new guidelines of the government for social gathering and so forth, with outdoor communal area to keep the customers separated. Here again, we should support small businesses of this nature after what they've gone through, and I would go along with approval and conditions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hesketh. Councillor Will Adams.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Mr. O'Hagan for the representation. I think the big thing here is, I think, about fairness, and for me, looking at the application in front of me, that plays a big part. I think Mr. O'Hagan said it was about survival, and that's the same case for a lot of local businesses. I think us, from a planning committee point of view, we've got to look at the application which is in front of us, and we have to do right by everyone within that locality. I'm certainly for approval for this application. It should not be refused, but I do have concerns regarding condition 3 and whether that is needed. We are in a different environment in terms of COVID, and I think we have a duty, as well as to residents and residential amenity, but we also have a duty to support businesses in this difficult period, and what might also be, Chair, a further difficult period in the months ahead. So I will reserve my right to say how I will vote on it, subject to that condition possibly be removed, and I'll listen to other councillors on the committee. Thank you.
Debbie, did you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Adams is right. We should be fair and the process should be standard. And as you've seen already tonight, the earlier application that came into us was subject to a noise impact assessment, which was assessed by Environmental Health. It's a standard process, and we do that where we feel it's necessary to do that. We did it in the Bamber Bridge application, and I've asked for the same on this one. Noise monitoring is a formal assessment of the state of affairs by qualified professionals, one on behalf of the council, one on behalf of the applicant. It's not simply based on objections received. But as I said earlier, if there are any doubts whatsoever on noise grounds and Environmental Health still have concerns and haven't withdrawn their objection, My opinion is that it's likely we would err on the side of caution and refuse. This compromise option gives a grace period of 6-8 months so that we can assess it properly, but it also allows the applicant to carry on trading. Mr O'Hagan referred to pavements and use of pavements, and I agree. Every premises in that retail area uses a car park or a pavement. But the fact remains that Mr O'Hagan doesn't have any pavement. He has a forecourt and it is subject to conditions. And the recent COVID regulations are clear that the new regulations, temporary regulations, don't override those conditions, and they're the ones that we're looking to regularise. I would still recommend that temporary period of grace. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Debbie. I'm with Mr O'Hagan on this one. Sorry, no, I mean, that bit of Walton Dale, it's got to be one of the noisiest, most polluted areas in the borough. Got to be. Anyway, Councillor Barry Yates.
Right, thank you, Mr Chairman. I agree that I think that, well, I think it should. Number 3 should be removed for all fairness right through. We as a council are promoting small businesses. We've stifled this business right through COVID. It's tried hard to get going. It's turned a crop spot into a good area. It's the noisiest area, I'd say, around Walton Dale, especially on that roundabout there. It is tremendous with the noise. Next, across from it, there's an estate agents that won't be bothered with the noise. You've got acoustic fence up and booths up, and everything is done there to stop the noise through the houses. This gentleman's bent over backwards to make sure that his business is going to be good and suitable for all the residents that are around him as well. You only need to turn the corner here and you'll see 30 people sat out on a pavement drinking. Just round the corner, not 500 yards away. And we as a council are saying, we need to put really how many conditions onto this applicant. I think it's we should remove condition 3, and I'll propose, and I'll ask for a seconder off somebody to say that we approve the application with the removal of condition 3.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Yates. Chris Lomax, Councillor Chris Lomax.
In 1966, I was lucky enough to move into the White Bull, where I lived for 21 years. When I first moved in, the A6, as it was then, was a quiet road. On a Sunday morning, if something went past, you'd look out to see what it was. By the time I moved out, it was at times difficult to have general conversations upstairs in the White Bull because of the amount of traffic going by. I really feel for Mr O'Hagan. I did drink in there because I was told that there was no Conservatives went in. Okay. And Dennis Delight used to play as well.
Yeah,
so, win-win.
Can I just tell you, Councillor Lomax, keep politics.
Sorry, yeah, I do apologise. It is a noisy road. And the way we have looked at other applications, I would also say, and I would personally second, that we remove number 3. Because it just doesn't seem fair to me. The gentleman has done a lot of work. We still have policies that we would be able to use. However, to me, take it out. It's a local business. It can only improve the area. So I would vote for it with the exception of taking 3 out, or with taking 3 out.
Thanks, Councillor Lomax. I'm going to take 2 more. I've got Councillor Flannery and then Councillor Moon. and then we're going to go to the vote on this. Okay, Councillor Flannery?
Thanks, Chair. If ever there was an application I wanted to see at committee, it was this one. From my involvements looking at what's being presented in front of us tonight and the history behind this couple have done everything they possibly could have done to make this business work. If ever there's an example of policy versus people and the madness that exists in the role we have as councillors, this is it. The circumstances are basically the infrastructure and how it's set out in terms of the relationship with the road, the building and the adjacencies. What they've actually installed, and out retrospective, is some of the best quality. What we've seen in front of us over the past 12 months has been a fair, balanced support in terms of our businesses in South Ribble because of this pandemic. And I want this to be minuted. This couple have done more than any other small business to make this work, any other, without any doubt. And we've seen them suffer, and we've seen them try and manage what effectively has been some inconsistencies in our policy. Our officers have done everything we can to a point, and I'll make that's a point I'm not going to make tonight, but to a point. What you have in front of us is an application to support a local business, local residents, the good people who have invested their life savings into this venture. And we are here with the responsibility to support them and this application. And as Councillor Yates and Adams has said, and Councillor Lomax, we need to give them certainty. As a business owner myself, certainty is the biggest issue. Let's take this uncertainty out. Let's remove this recommendation 3, and let's go for the vote on granting them it permanently so they've got some certainty to go forward. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Caroline Moon.
Thanks, Chair. Without wanting to open up another hornet's nest, I am going to do. I'm fully supportive of going forward for this without the condition, absolutely without that condition. But what I wanted to just talk about is the hours. If I was going to want to see anything in this application that was conditioned on time, it would be an extension to those hours, personally, for me. I appreciate I may be one voice on this committee, but I want to say it. We are in a worldwide pandemic. We're in a COVID recovery period. We've got people who are literally at the end of their tether trying to survive. I would want to see in this that we grant this without that condition. So get your outside seating in, move on. But I would like to see that we allow an extension in those outside hours and condition that by all means for a 12-month period or a COVID recovery period. I don't have a difficulty with the condition on that, but I think to expect them to use this area till 8 o'clock Sunday to Thursday, 9 o'clock on a Friday and Saturday night, for me, and I know there's a house next door, I get it completely, there is a house next door. I don't think 10 o'clock is an unreasonable position personally. And if we want to say it's a COVID recovery, then let's have a COVID recovery. I personally feel as a committee, as a council, we should be doing everything within our power. And if local residents, and I know I'm saying this openly on a broadcast meeting, but if local residents cannot go that extra hour to support someone in their local community who is trying to survive, I think it's a really poor do, Chair. So I would be happy to support an extension.
So you want condition
limited,
4,
but with the condition
4.13 removing, and you want the hours extending to what?
Well, I'm happy to go with what's in the report, but I'm equally happy to compromise. I'm happy. For me, the 10:30 position, 10 o'clock in line with other bars in the area, I think is a reasonable condition. And if we wanted to cap it as a COVID recovery initiative, again, I'm comfortable with that, Chair. I just feel we should discuss that as a committee because it's here and we're not really doing that.
Okay, well, I said I was only going to take 2 more, but I'll allow Gareth, Councillor Watson and Councillor Yates one more time, and then we'll.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to agree with what Caroline said and frankly with what everyone else has said. I'd certainly be in approval, certainly be inclined to approve an extension of the hours on top of what's already been said and removing that condition. But I would also like to put a bit of support in for the officers because I can certainly understand why that recommendation has been made. There are obviously residences over the road, and they are trying to consider everyone. But I do think it's a fine balance, and whilst I'm inclined more towards the business on this side and say that extension and change, I absolutely appreciate why the officers would have put this condition in to try and represent all views. So I do understand and appreciate what they've done.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Watson. Debbie, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, it's just a point to clarify. It's not really to do with the determination, just that if members decide to extend the hours, we've aligned them with the premises licence, and the tighter of the two regimes stands. So just because you give longer hours here doesn't automatically mean that they can do that. You would still need to adjust your licence. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, so then it'd have to go to licensing committee. And the licensing committee and the planning committee always work together, don't they? Councillor Yates.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As mover of the proposal, I'm happy to take in Caroline's recommendation, and just to point out in doing so that the other local that's just round the corner can drink outside until any hours, well, 12 o'clock, whatever. But just to point that out, and if the officers wanted to put it in line with the local pubs around that area, I'd be quite happy for that to go ahead.
Great, well, let's go. Sorry? You need to take that up with licensing. Yeah, this is planning. Yeah. Okay. So it's all right, you're okay. Right, going to go to the vote, removing condition 3, yeah? And that he approaches the licensing committee again to get his hours extended outside, in fairness with everybody else, because that's what we're trying to do as a council, aren't we? So are we happy to go to that vote for approval with the removal of condition 3 and 4.13, so we can then go back? 4.13, Caroline, Councillor Moon, isn't it? I've got 4.13 of mine.
Removal of condition 3 and amending 4.
Okay, so removal of condition 3, an amendment of condition 4. Joe, do you want to come in now, do you? Come on, we've only got 10 minutes.
Sorry, just to clarify, what are we amending condition 4 to in terms of hours? I know that you will have to go back to the licensing authority to amend hours, but we'll need to know what the hours are for the planning as well.
Sorry, we'll have to speak up a bit more, Jeff.
Sorry, I just wanted to know what the hours were being changed to in condition 4. I know it's being amended.
Well,
what was the recommendation?
I would ask Councillor Flannery to come in as this, but I would like them to be brought into line with all the other drinking establishments in that area, because none of them are the same.
Sorry.
Come on in, Debbie.
There's 3 or 4 pubs in the same retail area. 2 have got historic trading hours, so they have no limits whatsoever. 1 is a relatively new one on Cambridge Street, and that's restricted, I think, to 11.
Yeah, the Cambridge Street one's not in the locality.
But it's in the same,
as I'm concerned.
It's in the same retail area though, so it has fair assessment.
Right.
But none of them have the same hours.
Okay, so do we know what the hours the Bobby Peel are, or the White Bull, or the U Tree? Yeah. So, Councillor Flannery, come on. It's a point in here.
Thanks, Chair. Without crossing over as Chair of Licensing, I think it would be only reasonably and fair, like we've always tried to do when we try to standardise all these things, that we go to whatever the latest is in that area, and then we work back from that. If Jodie needs a time, thank you. And Councillor Yates knows the times by the sounds of it.
Councillor Moon.
Can I just, do we have to? I've been on planning a long time, Chair, but I don't know the answer to this. Do we have to put hours in, Debbie? Can we not just take 4 out and then they go to licensing, or do we have to put a cap on it and then go to licensing?
The tighter of the 2 regimes wins effectively. So we can take this condition off and give them 24 hours a day, but the licence itself is restricted to the time that we've put in. And we were trying to align that just for convenience of everybody, for us and for the applicant. If we remove condition 4, then it's up to the licensing committee to extend the hours for the outside use. This is only for the forecourt, don't forget, it's not for the wider facility, but at the moment they are already restricted to the premises licence, which is fairly limited. It's the times that we propose for planning as well.
Right, okay, thanks for that, Debbie. I would suggest we remove condition 3 and condition 4. Nods of heads. Right, so the proposal is for approval, but removing conditions 3 and 4. Let's go to the vote. Councillor Adams.
4.
Councillor Donoghue.
4, Chair.
Councillor Flannery. 4. Councillor Green. Councillor Hancock.
4, Chair.
Councillor Hesketh.
4, Chair.
Councillor Lomax.
4, Chair.
Councillor Amelia.
4.
Councillor Moon.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Watson.
For approval, Chair.
And Councillor Yates.
4.
And I am also 4. Okay, Jodie, can you tell us what the scores on the doors were?
Councillors have voted unanimously to approve the application for the taps and wine bar, subject to conditions, save for the removal of conditions 3 and conditions 4.
Wonderful. Okay, sir. All right, moving on to item number 12 this evening, 80 Alder Drive, Horton. Debbie, if you'd like, pardon? Is it you, Catherine? It says Debbie Roberts on my script here. You've changed a bit in the last 5 minutes. All right, Catherine, you've got 3 minutes, love.
Thank you so much, Chair. The application is for a single-storey rear extension. It would normally be dealt with through delegated powers, but has been brought to committee as the applicant is a serving council officer. So the site is located in Alder Drive, Horton, a residential area, and it's a dormer bungalow. This application slide demonstrates currently there is a large roof extension that's already been built, so that's historical, and what you can see here are the proposed elevations. The rear extension projects 4 metres by 6.6 with 2.8 metres to the eaves. The next plan demonstrates the floor plan, so you can see how far it comes out from the rear elevation. And the last slide demonstrates a side view from the rear, where you can see the adjacent attached property. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
What a great presentation. Concise. Ding. Thanks, Catherine. Right, we don't have any registered speakers. We don't have any members not on committee. We don't have the applicant or the agent. I've got lots of hands up. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm the ward councillor for the area, but again, this seems like an easy one to me, so I'm happy to just go for approval.
Councillor Adams.
I'll second that and say let's go for the vote.
Fancy this joviality at planning. Who'd have thought? Okay, any other proposals? No. Councillor Green and Councillor Moon.
Start voting and they might come back in. Yeah, they're coming.
Okay, we'll go to the vote, and when they come back in, they were here for the presentation, weren't they? It was done so expertly, they might not have been here. All right, let's go to the vote. Councillor Adams. 4. Councillor Donoghue.
4, Chair.
Councillor Flannery. 4. Councillor Hancock.
4, Chair.
Councillor Hesketh.
4.
Councillor Lomax.
4.
Councillor Amelia.
4.
Councillor Moon.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Watson.
For approval, Chair.
Councillor Yates.
4.
Councillor Mary Green. And I am for that. Jodie, will you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Councillors have voted unanimously to approve the application at 80 Alder Drive, subject to conditions.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that. Stephen, are we taking 13 and 14 together?
I'll do the 5 seconds each.
No, you can give one of them 2.5 and the other 30 seconds.
Yeah,
Basically, Stephen, if you'd like to present item 13 and item 14 on tonight's agenda.
Yeah, basically an update of the validation checklist that's been updated to take in new legislation, etc., etc. It's more user friendly, and we're just asking you to approve it for us to use it to validate applications. That's the first one.
Is this to go to full council, or is
No, the validation checklist is for yourselves for approval.
right? So you're asking us to approve that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we need to go to the vote on that. Are we all happy to agree with it? There's no dissenters. Okay, Jodie, would you like to give us that vote?
Councillors have voted to approve the South Ribble validation checklist unanimously.
Thank you very much. And item 14, I think this is a bit more.
Yes, this has been subject of discussion at probably 2 or 3 committees recently, hasn't it? And it's to avoid unnecessarily bringing minor applications to the committee and, adding extra work and burden to us all. So the intention is to change the constitution to the effect that if the applicant or agent is related to a member of staff, the application will only be brought to planning committee if that relationship is with a member of staff involved in the decision-making process, i.e. planning staff and other internal consultees, or a member serving on planning committee. So the vote is for your views on that to allow us to take it to full council because it's a change to the constitution. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stephen. Right, let's go to the vote then. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, could I just clarify something? Does this work the other way around as well? I mean, this is for an officer who's putting in a report. What about if a councillor puts in an application? Does that
No, sorry.
the same process?
No, to be clear, if a councillor is putting in an application or an officer of the council is putting in an application, it will still come to planning committee. This is just to pick up on where there's a relation putting in applications, where we've had a plethora of them coming through recently.
Okay.
I.e., if your cousin applied for planning permission.
Yeah, I understand that bit.
It doesn't have to come to committee
for a planning application. And it was a straightforward application. I'm just wondering about the equality and diversity in that case. We've been discriminated as councils.
I think it comes back to transparency, though, doesn't it? If people were thinking that we were having our own applications delegated to us, it would be very difficult to defend against.
Right. On the basis of that, I'll vote for.
Okay, so let's go to the vote. Councillor Adams?
For.
Councillor Donoghue?
For, Chair.
Councillor Flannery? For. Councillor Green? Councillor Harry Hancock?
For, Chair.
Councillor Hesketh?
For, Chair.
Councillor Lomax?
For, Chair.
Councillor Amelia?
For.
Councillor Moon?
For.
Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Watson? Councillor Yates? For. And I am also for. Jodie, will you confirm the outcome of the vote, please?
Councillors have voted unanimously to approve the amendment of the scheme of delegation for planning applications and for that to be recommended to full council.
Wonderful. Thank you all for your attendance this evening. It's been really nice to see you all again, actually. I've really enjoyed tonight.